starts going through his addressing of a number of applications that are pending before the commission. So start off very briefly. Drew talked a little bit about this, about what we do, what we don't do. As the commission, we review water withdrawals. We review and regulate consumptive use and diversions into and out of the basin. So this is kind of a one-shot of what we actually do with respect to surface water and groundwater withdrawals. If you withdraw more than 100,000 gallons per day, you've got to come into the commission for approval. If you consumptively use more than 20,000 gallons per day, you've got to come to the commission for approval. If you are diverting water out of the basin at greater than 20,000 gallons per day, you need to come to the commission. If you're diverting water into the basin, our regulation begins at gallon 1. So that's kind of a brief summary of what we do. With respect to the natural gas industry, these thresholds change. Because we didn't know when this play began what the water use profile was like for this industry, the commission decided that we would regulate withdrawals, we would regulate consumptive use from gallon 1. So in reality, if you take a 5-gallon bucket down to a stream and you fill that bucket and withdraw it from that stream, and that water is used for the drilling of a gas well, that falls under our regulation. So it begins at gallon 1. General contents of the docket. Throughout much of the nation, if you are a regulator and you grant approval of something, it's typically in the form of a permit. In our jargon, our equivalent of a permit is a docket. These are the kinds of things that are contained in our dockets, and I'll go over them very briefly. Project information, approval type, is it groundwater, is it surface water, what's this water going to be used for, source information, in what basin, what sub-basin is this withdrawal being requested, approval conditions. In every docket we specify the maximum amount of water that can be withdrawn. We also specify the instantaneous rate at which that water can be withdrawn. These are all things that are contained in all of our dockets. Flow protection, and I'll get into pass-by and what flow protection is in a moment. Standard conditions, metering plans, recording requirements, all of those are contained in these dockets. Every docket is unique. Every docket is specific to a withdrawal or a diversion or a consumptive use. It's not one size fits all. Special conditions, expiration dates, again, if there are pass-by conditions, if there are other issues that are unique to that withdrawal, they will be contained in the docket as well. Consumptive use, kind of giving you the 5-cent definition of consumptive use. It's water that's used but not returned to the basin undiminished in quantity. That's the general term or definition for consumptive use. Withdrawals, whether they be groundwater or surface water, taking or removal of water from any source within the basin for use within the basin. If it's withdrawn within our basin but used out of the basin, that becomes a diversion. Transfer of water into or out of the basin. So those are the general definitions, and Drew had already started talking about some of the dockets and whether they pertain to withdrawals, whether they pertain to diversions, those kinds of things, and he'll resume that in a moment. Consumptive use, we essentially have two forms of consumptive use approval: the standard procedure, and these are the things that are contained in the typical consumptive use review, application information, notification requirements, water requirements, water source identification, metering plans, consumptive use compensation method. Those are the things that are typically contained in our docketed consumptive uses. Our gas-related approval by rule, there is this misconception that approval by rule is a shortcut and doesn't really require a whole lot of information. I will ask you to take a quick look at this list. It's very similar to this list. The information that we require is comprehensive. This includes the ABR approvals. So it's not a short list or an end run around the requirements. Again, we get into metering plans, site maps, methods of consumptive use mitigation, notification requirements. We also require that the applicant prove to us that they've got a permit from DEP to drill the wells on the pads that are involved in these ABR approvals. Groundwater withdrawals. This is a list of the things that applicants have to submit to us before they get action taken by our commissioners. It's quite lengthy. I won't read everything, but our scientists and our engineers base their decisions on a whole bunch of data, site-specific data. Every single project application has to come to us with site-specific information. Every one of these projects that has an application submitted to us, one of our engineers or one of our scientists or a team of engineers and scientists go out and visit every single site. This is not a stamp of approval. Every site is visited. These are the kinds of things that we require the applicant to submit to us before staff would make a recommendation to our commissioners. Staff don't have the authority to approve or deny anything. What we do is look at the body of information that's submitted by the applicant, and we make a recommendation to our commissioners. They take the action. But this is the kind of information that has to be submitted to staff for us to have a technical understanding of what the project involves and enables us to make a recommendation to the commissioners. If this information is not submitted to us, then the application is deemed administratively incomplete and it's sent back to the applicant. Only when the application is administratively complete do we go into the technical review. Surface water applications. Again, a long list of things that we require the applicant to submit. Again, a lot of information about notification. We also, with respect to surface water and groundwater, I'll back up for a moment with respect, when we talk about groundwater, I'll draw your attention to the notification. Landowners located within a 1/2 mile radius of a proposed groundwater withdrawal will be notified by the applicant. The applicant has to give us proof that they notified all the landowners located within a 1/2 mile radius of that project. Jumping back to surface water, if you are a riparian landowner, you are notified if you're located within 1/2 mile up river or 1/2 mile down river from a proposed withdrawal. So there are specific notification requirements for all of these applications. With respect to surface water, I know there have been a number of the public that have made mention of cumulative impact analyses. We do cumulative impact analyses on every single docket that is submitted to us, whether it's for surface water or groundwater. We do the cumulative impact analysis both looking upstream and downstream. So it is done as a matter of course. Safe yield calculation, we want to make sure that the resource is not overprescribed. I'll get into a moment about how we do that. We also have a team of biologists that go out and look at these sites, because there are times when site conditions actually support a higher level of classification than that stream is given by DEP or DEC or MDE. If our biologists go out and they find the macroinvertebrates, the biotic life that supports a higher level of protection, we will give it a higher level of protection when we draft the docket. So it's based upon our folks going out, taking a look at these sites individually, and again, our team go out to every one of these sites. When Drew starts talking about some of these specific projects, there are a few technical terms, and I want to go over those very briefly, so when they come up, you'll understand what they are. The three that I want to draw your attention to are Q710, ADF, which is average daily flow, and pass-by flow, and I'll get into the definition of those in a moment. Q710, it's really a drought flow. It's really a very low flow condition that occurs in these streams, and actually this is a natural phenomenon. This is not industry related. Droughts occur naturally. Q710 is the lowest average flow experienced during a consecutive 7-day period that's estimated to recur on average once every 10 years. So it is a drought. The Q710 is used as essentially a litmus test as to whether a given withdrawal is going to trigger a pass-by or not. If you're proposing to withdraw more than 10% of Q710 that has been calculated for the point of withdrawal, this is not a one-size-fits-all. Our team do all of these calculations for Q710 average daily flow, and we calculate pass-bys. If you're proposing to withdraw more than 10% of Q710 at the point of withdrawal, then you will trigger a pass-by. So just keep in mind that Q710 is used for one purpose only. Are you going to be laden with a pass-by or are you not? That's the Q710 function. Going to very briefly, kind of as a reminder, droughts occur naturally. SRBC can't control or prevent droughts. What we can do is minimize the impact of withdrawals when droughts occur. 10% of Q710 again is that threshold. If you're proposing to withdraw more than 10% of Q710, you get a pass-by. What's average daily flow? All of these stream gauges that the USGS maintains throughout our basin collect data on a regular basis. We use the data from those USGS gauges to calculate these statistics for every point of withdrawal. So an average daily flow is the average of all individual daily flow rates for the entire period of record for any given stream flow gauge. So that's essentially Q710 and ADF for average daily flow. What's a pass-by? When you think about pass-by, and I'll have a slide here in a moment, think interruptible flows. There are times when stream flows get low enough that we should cease all withdrawals, and that's where this pass-by comes in. And this is also where the cumulative impact analysis comes in. We look at the proposed withdrawal, and then we look at all existing upstream users. And we calculate what that cumulative impact is on the stream. And if it exceeds that 10% of Q710, even if this individual withdrawal we're looking at does not exceed that 10% of Q710, but cumulatively it does, then it gets a pass-by. So that's kind of how this whole pass-by process comes into being. And again, the bottom is just kind of a step-by-step process. If you're proposing less than 10% Q710, either individually or cumulatively, no pass-by. Greater than 10% Q710, individually, cumulatively, you get a pass-by. Again, with respect to pass-by, think interruptible withdrawals. When the flows get low, people have to stop withdrawing. They can't come back on the stream until it rains again, stream flows come back up past that trigger number, then they can resume withdrawing. They can never withdraw more than their docket allows. So even if there's a flood going on, if they're permitted for 500,000 gallons per day, they can only take 500,000 gallons per day. It's spelled out in the docket. Very briefly, I don't know how easily you can see this, but this kind of gives you a sense of flood events, individual monthly events, average daily flow, and the kind of the right hand of that bottom graph gives you some sense of what Q710 looks like, and 10% of Q710. The largest spike on the left is actually a 100-year drought. The next one in is, I think that's April mean flow. The third one in from the left is December mean flow. Then average daily flow, which is this number right here. And when we take this and blow it up, you can get to see it a little bit more clearly. Again, average daily flow, August mean flow, Q710, and 10% of Q710. Theoretically speaking, if this were a trout stream, it would be, the pass-by would be 25% of average daily flow, which means if the flows drop below 25% of average daily flow, they're off. They can't come back until flows get back up. So what does this look like? In this case, we're looking at 25% of ADF. That red dashed line is the trigger point at which they have to cease withdrawals. It's far above Q710, which we just discussed as a drought. It's far above 10% of Q710. So we do this to protect the stream so that when droughts occur, we've got adequate protection for the stream and the aquatic ecosystems that live therein. Summary of SRBC review. We try to be science-based in all of our decisions. We do cumulative impact analysis. We believe they are critically important. We do them on every project. Timing and location is important. It's not so much the amount of water that's being withdrawn, it's the location from which it's being drawn that we believe is just as important. Think interruptible sources, because we use those pass-bys to get industries, and this isn't just gas industry. These are all industries. We get them off the streams when the flows drop below these critical locations. Just as a reminder, we've got a website. It's www.srbc.net. You go on that site, there's a whole bunch of information on there. Just picking out a few of them, Water Resources Portal. I think we're one of the few agencies that is as transparent as we are. Here's the information you'll see on the Water Resources portal. Not only will you see projects that have been approved over the years, you will see applications that are pending. These are applications that have not yet been completed, nor have the commissioners made a decision about approving or denying. They're in process. You can call those up. There are maps. You can find projects that are located close to where you live. You can open up that information. You can read application information on our website. You can again go back and look at projects that have already been approved by the commissioners. You can go to our remote water quality monitoring network. We've got 50 sondes that are out in our basin, the upper portion of our basin right now, collecting data every 15 minutes. They collect six parameters automatically. They collect pH, temperature, specific conductance, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, and water depth. There are 6 parameters. You can see all of that data real time. Again, this data is collected every 15 minutes at these 50 locations. It gets uploaded through essentially a cell phone system, and you can monitor this afternoon at any one of these 50 locations that we're collecting data this morning. So we feel very strongly that trying to monitor things that are going on automatically in our basin is a very good thing. We also believe that sharing that information with you is a good thing. Another piece of information is the Marcellus shale or gas shale subpage on this website. You can go to that page, open it up, and learn a whole lot about what we've done, what we know about the industry. And if you go to that natural gas shale and natural gas well development page, the red dash is a copy of this PowerPoint. So if you've been confused, frustrated, or left in the dark about anything I've said, go to that website, go to that PDF, and you can call up these exact slides that I just shared with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch?
Jim, I just want to give a little more perspective on what's involved in these reviews. And this might not be a fair question to throw at you, but could you just give me what's a typical time frame for a withdrawal application? If I submit a complete application this week, will it be approved within a month, or what's the typical review time?
Typically, surface water withdrawals, if the application is complete, that means all the pieces are there and they're technically correct. Typically 6 months for an application to turn around. For groundwater, it's typically 9 months to a year for us to turn one around. The dilemma is we don't always get the information we need to base a decision on the first time through. We frequently get an application, crack it open, and find pieces missing. So our staff then have to go back to the project sponsor, give them a list of deficiencies, wait for that to come back, and there's this back and forth. But we will not make a decision until we have all of the information. And if we have an incomplete application and it sits there for a sufficient period of time, we'll get back to the project sponsor and suggest that they either complete the application or withdraw.
You might have touched on this before. I know you've talked about this in the past, but if we get a request for a certain amount of daily withdrawal, we typically approve that amount, or is there adjustments made based on certain?
That's a good question, Ken, and there is this perception that the SRBC rubber stamps everything, and we never deny anything. That's the perception. Here's the reality. If you come in as an applicant and you want to withdraw 1 million gallons per day, but our analysis indicates that the best you can withdraw from that location is 500,000, our staff will recommend that you reconsider your request and drop it down to 500,000. If you choose to move forward and stay with 1 million, then it will come to the commissioners and staff will recommend a denial. Usually what happens is if our staff tells the project sponsor that that water simply isn't there, the project sponsor typically reduces their request or they simply withdraw the application. So if you look at how many times staff is recommending denial to the commissioners, it's relatively rare. The reason is staff's trying to work with the applicants, let them know the direction in which staff is going to make a recommendation. And frequently the project sponsor either withdraws their application or they lower the amount of water that they're asking for.
Could you address the question of cumulative impacts? You said that you addressed the issue of cumulative impacts by claiming that cumulative impacts are studied in relation to each water withdrawal, but what we're talking about is cumulative impacts both in terms of all the gas drilling wells, all the water withdrawals, and all the pipelines, all the roads, all the well pad construction, all the air pollution, and also the chemicals that are not disclosed.
Right.
And could I really want to have a dialogue here. How do you study cumulative impacts for water withdrawal for high volume slick water hydraulic fracturing with horizontal drilling unless all of the abandoned oil and gas wells from the past have been mapped and until all the fractures, the pre-existing fractures deep down under the earth that convey to the surface, which are responsible for some of the methane migration, until all those fractures have been mapped. So I don't understand the claim that cumulative impacts are studied when none of those things are in place.
Okay, you and I are talking about two different things. When I talk about cumulative impacts, I'm talking about water withdrawal.
But it's
That's
fractured.
all I'm talking about.
You're fragmenting the water withdrawal from the purpose that the water withdrawal is for. How do you not take responsibility for what the water is going to be used for in terms of its long-term cumulative impacts?
The way our regulations are written, we are concerned about the impact on the aquatic ecosystem of that withdrawal.
That's the problem.
Well, again, what we're not allowed to do, and what you wouldn't want us to do, is go outside the powers that we are given.
Yes,
Well, we can't.
It's a moral emergency.
We cannot do that.
Where is the cumulative impact of billions of gallons of water permanently removed from the basin? Where is the cumulative impact over 20 years? What's the total volume of water that's going to be removed from the basin? What's the amount, and where is the impact study?
Let me try to put that very issue into perspective. The total amount of water that this industry has consumptively used as of September 30th this fall, the total amount of water was 5.6 billion gallons. The total amount, let me finish, the total amount that has been consumptively used was 5.6 billion gallons.
Wait, over what area?
That's since the play began throughout our entire basin.
Right.
Since this play began, which was, so let me finish, please. Let me finish this question. Since this play began, which was around the summer of 2008, up until September 30th, 2011, the total amount of consumptive use, 5.6 billion gallons. Let me tell you what the average flow from the Susquehanna into the bay is. The average daily flow from the Susquehanna into the bay, 26 billion gallons per day. So if you're looking at the relative impact from a hydrologic perspective, this kind of global perspective, the amount of water that is consumptively used by this industry is very low. That doesn't mean we don't care. That doesn't mean that we're not tracking.
We're only 2.5% into the full development of Marcellus Shale gas drilling, and we're asking for real cumulative impacts, not facts about how tiny it's been so far, and not just quantity. But we're looking at cumulative impacts, including not just the quantity, but the quality of life and the health of our ecosystem and our people, and nothing that you've said has addressed that at all.
I'd like to thank Dr. Richenderfer for his presentation, and I'd like to call Mr. Dayhoff back to the podium so that the actual dockets that
This is important. What is the acceptable amount? At what point will you say no?
Yeah.
What is the point?
Extraction site, is there a standardized way to report from each site? Because I've seen them paper and penciling the numbers that they are taking out of those water, and Hull said right back. They're paper and penciling.
Let me answer this man's question. The amount of water that can safely be withdrawn is, and one of the slides I had was sustainable yield. That is a calculation that goes back to answer your very question. how much water can safely be withdrawn from any given watershed or sub-watershed. That is part of our analysis.
It's based on a dynamic model.
It depends on the basin.
On this basin, you're in charge of the Susquehanna Basin. At what point will you say no, too much water is leaving?
What if they say 100 billion this year?
You can't keep taking it, it runs out. It's like fossil fuels. There's like replenishing it.
Well,
You can't remake
I
it.
will make one last statement and then I've got to defer to my colleague. These dockets are written for a 4-year period. That's one thing. So if by chance we've made a mistake in the amount of water that we've incorporated in our dockets, let me finish. I've entertained your questions, let me finish. If we have made a mistake and we find out that our math is wrong or our assumptions are incorrect, this docket lasts 4 years.
What happens if your error causes catastrophe?
Remember the amount of water.
Is there a chance that your error could cause catastrophe? Is there a chance?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to the
Is there a
docket.
chance